Welcome to Some Guy's Garage. Today we're going to take a look at the DCE400B 1-inch PEX expander. So if you're not familiar with this sort of tool, it's used for plumbing with PEX, where you use the expansion fittings. Basically, it's a ring that you expand and then it shrinks around any of the fittings that you're using to make a watertight seal, and is used with only the Pex-A type piping. This is generally the more expensive option when doing plumbing, but it's also one of the fastest and easiest. So I'll open this up and show you how it works in a minute, but this is just as a comparison. This is the Pex crimp system. So basically you end up having a little crimp ring, and this is just a fitting that had gotten cut off, but you have a crimp ring that it squeezes around the pipe. The problem with this and these type of crimpers is you need like 5 hands to do it. You need to put the fitting in, the pipe in, hold the ring in place, and then these themselves, you have to kind of spread the jaws here and really squeeze down. So you do need 2 arms. You can't do this with 1 hand. There are also the cinch rings, which are a little bit easier than that. So they kind of squeeze around, sort of like a hose clamp almost, kind of a ratcheting hose clamp, if you will, around the pipe. And it's a little easier than this, but these are just challenging. And the other thing, as you saw there when I opened up the jaws here, is just how wide that goes. So the challenge you have is in tight spaces, you can't get in there. And it's just really awkward to use in general. So I've used this to do plumbing jobs in the past. I always hate doing it. So I finally picked up one of the PEX expansion tools. DeWalt hasn't had these out for very long. And honestly, this is 1,000 times easier to do those fittings compared to the crimp rings that I've been using in the past. So let's open this up. I just put it back in the original packaging, but I have used this, so it's not a first time unboxing for me here. But we'll slide this out and open it up and show you what we have inside. So, of course, you get the typical DeWalt manual. There's some grease, which I'll talk about in a moment. You get your typical belt clip if you so choose. The tool itself is here, and then you have 3 different heads that come with it. You can get a couple other sizes separately, but this one comes with kind of the 3 typical sizes. So you have for 1/2-inch PEX, 3/4 PEX, and 1-inch PEX. So the way this works is this cone moves forward and expands the jaws of these. Let me actually pull one out here. So it expands these jaws here inside the pipe and expands the pipe open. And the pipe has some memory, so it wants to shrink back down. But you have enough time, maybe 5 to 10 seconds, to insert the fitting before it shrinks back down. And then once it does, it forms a watertight seal. And so this piece screws onto the head over top of this cone, and that's where the grease comes in. Essentially, you put a little bit of this grease onto the cone here itself, and that just lubricates the motion while it's actually expanding that head. So let me get that all set up here. So we'll put some grease all over this, and we'll then screw the head on here. And doesn't need to be screwed on tight, just as long as it bottoms out, so you don't have to use any tools or anything like that to tighten it down. And let me grab a battery here as well. And then with the battery and the lock turned off, what you'll see here is as I squeeze the trigger, this will expand. And then the other thing it does is rotate. So every time it does an expansion, it rotates a little bit. And it takes 4, 5, 6, depending on the pipe, expansions to actually get the pipe open enough before it can accept a fitting. So that little bit of rotation just makes sure that it isn't putting all the pressure on one point in the pipe. So let me squeeze the trigger here and you can see as it expands. And you can see that little bit of rotation each time as it was expanding. Obviously, with a pipe on here, it actually constricts this, so it doesn't open quite as much as you see here, but that's the general motion. You can see just how wide that is opened up. So let me show you how that works with some actual pipe here. This is Pex-A. Like I mentioned, it has to be Pex-A. The Pex-B or C does not work with this system. And you have to use these little rings here as well. So these are kind of expansion rings that help hold things together. So you slip that over the end. These are also different fittings, so you can't use the standard Pex-B style fittings that you would normally use. Although these do fit the Pex-A pipe and you can use the crimp rings, you can't use the expansion system without these different fittings. So let me show you how this works in practice. I have the tubing cut square with the expansion ring on. There are little stops in the end of the expansion ring to make sure it's in the right spot. So then all you do is take the tool here and insert it into the end of the tool and pull the trigger. I will do that in a second here. It just makes a bit of noise, so I want to be able to explain what's going to happen. So once I pull the trigger, it will start expanding here, and eventually will bottom out on the edge of this kind of shoulder here. And then you need to go maybe 5, 6, 7 more times to make sure that it's fully expanded and ready to go. And then once that's done, you can actually slip the fitting inside. So I'll do that now. So there we go, and then we can push the fitting inside and make sure it bottoms out. There's ears there that control where that needs to go. And then we just wait 30 seconds or so here as this shrinks back down. A little bit of heat or holding it with your hand can help speed that up. Let it shrink down. And then once it's shrunk, it'll actually hold onto the fitting. So we're already tight now. You can see you can still rotate it like any PEX fitting would, but it is tight and I couldn't pull that out even if I tried. So it's as simple as that. Pretty easy to do. You only need a couple hands, unlike the other tools. And with the right angle head, you can get into some pretty narrow spaces as well, and makes for a quick and easy watertight seal. So I also have some 3/4 inch fittings here, so let me do one of those as well so you can see how that works. We'll just get the other head off and put the 3/4 one on and then do another fitting. So easily screws off. Grab the other one here, screw this one on. And as quickly as that, we're ready for 3/4 fittings. Again, the pipe is cut square. We'll push the ring on and it bottoms out. We'll insert the tool into that. We'll pull the trigger, again, letting it go for a number of times and letting it rotate as it's expanding the pipe. And then we'll push the fitting in. So here we go. And in it goes. I actually did find that the 3/4 fittings, you don't need to expand it quite as much. So 3, 4, 5 times is all that's required as opposed to the 1/2 inch ones. But just as quickly, we're able to get a good seal on these as that ring shrinks around the fitting itself. So already, again, it's tightening up. You can still rotate it. And once that's shrunk tight around the fitting, you have your watertight seal. People generally recommend at least 20 minutes between putting a fitting in and applying water pressure. So just hold off putting water back into the system for 15, 20 minutes, half an hour before you actually charge the system or anything like that, just to make sure that it's had a chance to shrink all the way back down, especially if you're working in colder environments. All right, so that's the DeWalt DCE400 PEX expander tool. Overall, it was a game changer for me. I always fought with that other style of PEX crimp ring, and this just makes it so much easier. As part of doing my basement, check out that series if you aren't already watching it. I've used this to install all of the plumbing, and it was just so much easier. Like I said, it is a fairly expensive tool. So these go, in Canada anyway, $500 to $600. So it's definitely not a typical DIY tool. The other systems, especially if you're only doing a few fittings, work well enough that you can get away with it. But I've done a fair bit of plumbing over the years, and this tool just makes it so much easier. So it was worth the money to me. Anyway, that's it for today. If you have any questions about this tool, let me know in the comments below. If you aren't already subscribed, please consider it. And as always, thanks for watching.